Have you ever noticed that many people respond to mental health concerns differently than they do physical health concerns? If someone is in physical pain, we don't think twice about taking the person to the doctor. If someone sustained a life-threatening injury, we wouldn't hesitate to call 911 or to take the person to the emergency room for treatment. However, when it comes to severe mental and emotional distress, many of us don't seem to know what to do. We may not even offer to get the person the help they need. We may hang back and hope the person just gets better on his or her own. You know, I've even heard friends tell a student who is considering suicide, "Dude, if you keep talking like that, they're going to lock you up." I've heard parents approach a mental health assessment as if it were punishment, saying things like, "If you keep talking like that, I'm going to take you to the psych ward." Can you imagine how silly it would sound to say, "If you keep talking about that broken arm of yours, I'm going to take you to the hospital"? So why is it different when it comes to a broken heart? Why do we see emotional pain as a weakness to be pushed down and ignored, yet we see physical pain as something we should treat? I guess we may still have some hang-ups to work through. The point of our training this year is to give you an idea of the signs that someone may be struggling and to give you some ideas of how to respond supportively to the person who may be considering suicide. But before we do that, take a look at this clip from the movie Mrs. Doubtfire.
Oh, he's choking. He's choking. He's choking. Help us. Somebody help. We need a doctor. He's choking. He's choking. Help us. Oh, God. Oh, God. He's choking here. Call 911.
No. I killed the bastard.
He's choking. Mrs. Doubtfire, help us. He's choking.
Help is on the way, dear!
Mrs. Doubtfire.
Help is on the way!
Mrs. Doubtfire.
Oh, go away.
He's choking.
Hold on. Yes,
He's choking here.
Stop. Oh. One more time, dear. Oh, no. Work with me. Come on. Come on.
Oh, my God.
Here. Come on.
Teachers, in just a moment, we're going to ask you to press pause on this video while you have a brief 3 to 4 minute class discussion around the questions that are on this slide. When you have finished your discussion, please press play to continue the video.
I recognize the signs of choking. Not just from seeing it, but from experiencing firsthand what it's like to be choked. I know the physical symptoms: coughing, not being able to get a good breath. I know what it feels like in my chest, in my throat. My eyes water, my face turns red. I might open my mouth wider than usual, trying to breathe. I might rock back and forth or grab my throat. Just as I know the physical symptoms, I also know the emotional symptoms. Being startled, confused, then concerned. I remember thinking, I can't breathe, and being afraid. I remember how I felt after I got my first good breath. It felt like it had been hours, but I knew it had only been seconds. I remember being grateful for each deep breath after. Because I know what it is to choke, I'm sometimes able to recognize when someone else is choking. Now, just as I know what it is to choke, I know what it is to experience emotional pain. I know what it's like to be depressed, disappointed, embarrassed. I know what it's like to feel criticized or to feel lonely. Who among us has not felt sad or mad or trapped by circumstance? If we know what it is to feel these emotions in our own lives, then if we pay attention, we may be able to recognize these emotions in the lives of others. Did you know that 81% of the people who attempt suicide report letting others know they were thinking about making a suicide attempt before they did it? If we pay attention and know the warning signs of suicide, we just may be in a position to help someone before they make an attempt.
Some warning signs that someone may be considering killing himself are more obvious than others. For example, talking about suicide. Any talk about suicide, dying, or self-harm, such as "I wish I hadn't been born and I'd be better off dead," is a warning sign. It doesn't matter if it's communicated in person, writing, via text, or social media. All such statements should be treated seriously. Other signs include seeking out lethal means. Learning someone is researching ways to kill himself or trying to find some means of killing himself, like seeking access to guns, pills, knives, or other objects that could be used in a suicide attempt. Preoccupation with death. Unusual focus on death, dying, or violence. Writing poems or stories about death. Getting affairs in order. Making out a will, giving away prized possessions, making arrangements for family members. Saying goodbye. Unusual or unexpected visits or calls to family and friends. Saying goodbye to people as if they won't be seen again. Some signs may be a little less obvious or seem to be about something else. Self-destructive behavior. Increased alcohol or drug use, reckless driving, unsafe sex, taking unnecessary risks as if they have a death wish. Self-loathing, self-hatred, expressing feelings of worthlessness, guilt, and shame, feeling like a burden, thoughts like everyone would be better off without me. Raging or seeking revenge. Someone who is raging or angry all the time or seeking revenge could be at risk for suicide. Some signs may be even more subtle. Sudden changes in behavior, becoming increasingly agitated or anxious, having trouble sleeping or sleeping all the time. Friends who have big changes in eating habits or self-care may be hurting. No hope for the future, feeling helpless, hopeless, or being trapped. There's no way out thinking. Belief that things will never get better or change. Withdrawing from others, withdrawing from friends and family, increasing social isolation, desire to be left alone. A sudden sense of calm. A sudden sense of calm and happiness after being extremely depressed may mean that the person has actually made a decision to attempt suicide, resolving the internal conflict. Extra words of warning. These signs should be of even greater concern if you know the person has a mood disorder like depression or bipolar disorder, has a history of substance abuse, has previously attempted suicide, or has a family history of suicide.
How many of you know the Heimlich maneuver? How many of you would at least recognize it if someone else were performing it, like Mrs. Doubtfire did in the clip? How many of you would be open to someone performing the technique on you if you were the one choking and couldn't breathe? Really? Seems pretty personal. Mrs. Doubtfire certainly invaded the man's personal space, but he didn't seem to mind. Posters like this have covered the walls of doctors' offices and school health classes for years. As a matter of fact, I have seen it successfully acted out so many times in my life that I usually expect that it's going to work. Now, I know in reality the Heimlich maneuver is probably not 100% effective. But call me an optimist. I am conditioned to believe that it will. As with choking, noticing the signs of suicidal thinking should be a call to action. But once you notice, then what? Do you say something? What if you're wrong? What if your friend gets angry? What if talking about suicide actually makes the person think about committing suicide? What if questions can grip us with fear and cause us to respond in all kinds of unhelpful ways? We may blame, yell, or lecture our friend. We may avoid our friend or dismiss the comment as if it were just a joke. We may convince ourselves that our friend didn't mean it. We may not reach out as we normally would. Listen, it's normal to be anxious and uncomfortable in a situation like this. But there's nothing wrong with thought. There's nothing wrong with feeling. It's the action we take that matters. Anyone who is thinking about suicide needs immediate help. Don't be crippled by the what-if questions. Talking about it can be tough, but you're not going to make someone suicidal by showing them that you care.
How you can help. Do start a conversation. Try saying things like, "I have been concerned about you lately," or "I've noticed you haven't been yourself. Is something going on?" Be yourself. Let the person know you care, that he or she is not alone. The right words are often unimportant. If you are concerned, your voice and manner will show it. Listen. Let the suicidal person unload despair, vent anger. No matter how negative the conversation seems, the fact that it exists is a positive sign. Do take the person seriously. If the person says things like, "I'm so depressed, I can't go on," ask the question, "Are you having thoughts of suicide?" You are not putting ideas in the person's head. You are showing that you are concerned, that you take him seriously, and that it's okay to share the pain with you. Do be sympathetic, non-judgmental, patient, calm, accepting. Your friend or family member is doing the right thing by talking about his or her feelings. And offer hope. Reassure the person that help is available and that the suicidal feelings are temporary. Let the person know that his or her life is important to you. Things not to do. Don't argue with the suicidal person. Avoid saying things like, "You have so much to live for," "Your suicide will hurt your family," or "Look on the bright side." Don't act shocked, lecture on the value of life, or say that suicide is wrong. Don't promise confidentiality. Refuse to be sworn to secrecy. A life is at stake. and you may need to speak to a trusted adult in order to keep the suicidal person safe. If you promise to keep your discussions secret, you may have to break your word. Don't offer ways to fix their problems or give advice or make them feel like they have to justify their suicidal feelings. It is not about how bad the problem is, but how badly it's hurting your friend or loved one. And finally, don't blame yourself. You can't fix someone's depression. Your loved one's happiness, or lack thereof, is not your responsibility.
Once the conversation comes to a close, then what? You have listened without judgment, you've offered support, you've shown the person that you genuinely care. So what's next? The next steps will depend in part upon what the person shares with you. Sometimes after a person shares with another who genuinely cares, the person may seem like everything is better. But it's important to realize that if someone has gotten to the point of considering suicide, the thoughts and feelings involved will probably not be taken care of with just one conversation. Life is complicated, and it may take some time before the person is again able to breathe easily. So, next steps.
Remind the person you care and will help as you can. Get professional help. Do everything in your power to get a suicidal person the help he or she needs. Contact your guidance counselor. Call a crisis line for advice and referrals. Encourage the person to see a mental health professional. Offer to go with the person. Be proactive. Those contemplating suicide often don't believe they can be helped, so you may have to be more proactive in offering assistance. Saying, "Call me if you need anything," is too vague. Don't wait for the person to call you or even to return your calls. Drop by. Call again. Invite the person out. Encourage positive lifestyle changes, such as a healthy diet, plenty of sleep, and getting out in the sun or into nature for at least 30 minutes each day. Exercise releases endorphins, relieves stress, and promotes emotional well-being. And continue your support over the long haul. Even after the immediate suicidal crisis is past, stay in touch with the person, periodically checking in or dropping by. Your support is vital to ensure your friend or loved one remains on the recovery track.
So, what if our genuine support is not 100% effective? What if the Heimlich maneuver is not effective? I have been taught that that could happen and how to respond in that situation. If a person can't breathe, he or she may pass out. When that happens, if I can see what is blocking the airway, I may be able to perform a finger sweep of the throat to dislodge the item. Then, if the person's not breathing, I could perform CPR. CPR, something else we're taught from a fairly early age. You know, though I'm not a doctor, an emergency responder, I've never been a lifeguard, I have been exposed to CPR technique many times in my life. It's part of our health curriculum in high school. About 12 million people a year are trained in CPR, and I would imagine many of you have been certified. I wonder if we had the same kind of approach to mental and emotional help, what kind of state our world would be in. If at some point you suspect your friend is at a real danger for committing suicide, you may need to take immediate action. Someone with a plan, time, place, means, and intent to commit suicide is at severe risk for suicide. Helping in this situation, it's critical.
Do not leave a suicidal person alone unless your own life is also in danger. Remove potential means of suicide, such as pills, knives, razors, or firearms. However, never, I repeat, never, try to force a gun or knife away from a person who is actively threatening to kill himself. Instead, leave the room and call 911 immediately. Dial 911 or take the person to an emergency room. Steps for you. It takes a lot of courage to help someone who is suicidal. Witnessing a loved one dealing with thoughts about ending his or her own life can stir up many difficult emotions. As you're helping a suicidal person, don't forget to take care of yourself. Find someone that you trust, a friend, family member, clergy person, or counselor, to talk to about your feelings and get support for yourself. You know, even though I've had some training in the Heimlich maneuver and in CPR, I've never been in a position where I had to perform either. It's a skill set that I hope I never have to use, and I would certainly defer to a medical professional should the situation arise. Listen, it's not that I don't want to help others, it's just that I hope no one in my realm ever suffers from choking. I hope everyone I know and everyone I meet can always breathe freely. But knowing how best to respond would help me keep my head and know how to help. And though I personally have never needed the Heimlich maneuver, I'm certainly grateful to know that there are people out there who could help me if I were ever choking. When it comes to recognizing the signs of suicide and knowing how to respond, I feel the same way. I want to be able to help in a life-giving way. It doesn't matter if you're not a trained psychiatrist, psychologist, or counselor. If you are conditioned to know how to respond to emotional crisis, you will be better prepared should the situation arise. If those who are struggling learn to recognize help when it arrives, learn to be open to receiving it, they may begin to believe that they will get through their pain and breathe again. Now, if you are someone who is choking emotionally right now, and you feel you just can't breathe, know that you're surrounded by a community of people who can help. Some may be more experienced than others. Some may recognize your signs of distress sooner than others. You may have to communicate a little more openly, reach out, get their attention. The attention you need, just like in the clip, may not always come from the people closest to you. But if you want to breathe, help can be found. Before we wrap up, take a couple of minutes to complete the self-assessment your teacher will pass out. Please do not put your name on this paper. It is just for self-reflection, a way to help you get in touch with how you're feeling right now. If, after completing the assessment, you would like to speak with someone about your own concerns or your concerns for another, please indicate so on the slip of paper your teacher passes out. On this paper, please do print your first name and last name, as well as your class schedule, to aid us in connecting with you in a timely manner. We will do our best to reach you within the next 24 hours.
On behalf of the Guidance Department, thank you for your mature attention to this subject and for being there for each other. When we choose to take the time to listen and to treat each other with care and respect, we give people a reason to live, a reason to show up, and a reason to believe it's a great day at Dixie. Have a good day, Colonels.